What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Grid Talk's YouTube channel and another episode of Grid Talk Talks the Grid. Today, I am joined with Nell, Charlie, and Liam, and we will talk about F1 feeder series, but I think we're going to especially focus on Formula 2 since it's the one series that most people watch, and that is like the closest to F1. Also, Formula 3 and Formula 2 have a similar way of working, I would say. So I think we're going to talk a bit about who are we looking at this season? Who do we think is interesting? But most importantly, do we think this whole system works, or is it useless? Is it too hard for people to make their way into Formula One? What are our thoughts? So I would say, to kick this off, what are you guys' initial thoughts when you think of Formula 2? Is it something that you watch? Is it something that you enjoy? Or is it more like, I don't know, it's like, baby racing, who wants to see it? Like, what are your initial thoughts on that?
I love Formula 2. It's like, well, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. I loved Formula 2. So other years, I've got really into it. In fact, I probably preferred it to F1, especially in the last couple of seasons. But I found it really difficult this year to get attached to any of the drivers, anything. And I think that's because of the format. I'm not so keen on the format this year. It was a big change. Did it need changing? No. Apart from maybe not having F2 and F3 on the same weekends. But I just think they've gone around doing that the complete wrong way. So I haven't watched this season as much as I should have. And that's actually made me really sad. But in general, I do really like the series.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I really enjoy it. I have enjoyed it more in the past than I do now. I think it's partly also because I don't really want to get as attached to people that I know are probably not going to make it, because there are so few places for them that, all the ones that usually you'd support, there's kind of no point because, where am I going to see them next? Not going to be F1.
I think, same sort of stance. I love Formula 2. Ever since I got into F1 back in 2012, been sort of watching it ever since. But I agree. I think the new structure of the weekend, it makes the fans feel more detached from the action and the drivers. And I think I agree with Charlie. It did not need changing. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So I'd like to see them go back to it. I know they're talking about it, but I'd like to see them go back to the old format.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think we've all realized, or we've been all feeling that there is a lot less going on this season because of the huge breaks they have in between, and from interviews and stuff, we've also heard the drivers talk about how that is really a struggle because you don't really get into that racing mindset with having months in between. I mean, now they are looking at their next race in September, if I'm not completely wrong, which is absolutely nuts if you ask me. Summer break, yes, of course, but holy cow, that's a bit long, especially since they already had a 1.5, 2 month break before that. So it's quite the discussion to have about whether or not this format works. I totally agree with you guys. Personally, I still get very invested into Formula 2 just because I love watching these guys race, and also to see them grow with time. I think the one thing you have with Formula 2 this year, and you also have it in Formula 3 a lot of the time, is that you never see the same podium over and over and over again, which is super exciting. There's always stuff going on with the sprint races and then the feature race, which I feel like is very fun, especially if you look at the learning aspect that those guys have. It's not like you have that one race a week, but it's a huge process that they're going through each weekend, and it's so exciting to see them go through that. But have you guys been watching some of it? And if yes, who are some people that you've been looking at? Maybe someone you were excited for in the past? I mean, you've all been saying that it's kind of lost the excitement for you, but who are some people that you've been really rooting for in the past maybe? I mean, for me, it's obvious. Mick Schumacher was my jam, and I'm so happy that he's one of the few that actually made it into Formula One. But I think we've all seen the Callum Ilott dilemma, I would want to call it, because that is just a shame. But like, who are some people that you've been looking at in the past? Who are some people you may be looking at right now? Is there anyone who's especially interesting, or, like, what are your thoughts on the current grid situation and how it's been going so far this season, maybe?
I think my two from the past that I loved and sadly haven't or didn't and then haven't yet had seats is Nick DeVries and Callum. They were two drivers that I felt really, really, really deserved to have an F1 seat. Like, Nick absolutely stormed that championship. Like, how that didn't invest into anything, I'm not sure. And yes, like, I'm a big Formula E fan, so I love seeing him with Mercedes there. But like, is that enough? Like, and there's been some rumors like flying around saying that he could be in that Williams for next year. But
do you want to go in the Williams?
Yeah, like, I think he deserves more than that. Like, I don't know. But also, Callum, that was just daylight robbery. Like, that shouldn't have even. I mean, we all know our opinions on Nikita Mazepin, but equally, I don't think I would have liked to see Callum in that Haas anyway. I would prefer to see him at Alfa Romeo. And I'm hoping, sorry to all the Kimi lovers out there, but I'm hoping he's off and then I can get Callum in that team.
So horrible, because I do agree, but I do love Kimi so much. But like, it really, it's time, right? It's time. I feel like that's also a problem, or that was a problem with Renault for me as well. Fernando Alonso is a living legend, no questions asked, but you have such talented driver academies. Yeah. Why the heck do you not invest into those guys? I don't understand it, but that's maybe something we can talk about a bit later on.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of people from the past, I think Charley's are pretty accurate. They're the two probably biggest surprises. Mm-hmm. And yeah, in terms of current ones, I think Pourchaire is performing very, very well. I enjoy watching him. In terms of someone who I think probably deserves a seat and won't get one, has to be Guan Yu Zhou, really. He's so unlikely to get that seat, and he really does deserve it. He's been in F2 for a while as well.
I think currently I'd have to probably go for Liam Lawson. I think he's been really, really good this year. The race in Monaco, the overtake on Piastri into Raskas was awesome. Just that whole race was really, really good. Also think Guan Yu Zhou, but just with Alpine tying down Ocon, and now I think Alonso is on a multi-year contract, I think he's going to have to think elsewhere if he wants to get into Formula 1, which is really, really sad, because if you devote your whole career to a driver academy and then you don't follow it up with a seat in that academy, I think that's really, really disappointing. But previously, I think the same with Ilott. Absolute robbery how he didn't get a seat in F1. Hoping, though, that there's still a chance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys, but there are some other people that I think are very interesting. I think Oscar Piastri is absolutely popping. Yeah. Like, what the hell? Like, basically the same as Liam Lawson. He came into this Formula 2 series this year and he just snapped. I mean, Liam has been a bit inconsistent lately. I don't know if he's been struggling. He's also driving DTM, in case some of you don't know. That is the German Touring Cars Championship. And he's really, really good in that, like really good, constant podiums, insane. But maybe it's that, just that hopping onto different cars every now and then, maybe that gets a bit distracting. Who knows? But yeah, Oscar Piastri, insane. I cannot say much more about that. But yeah, I think the shame that we have already been touching onto is that there are so many drivers that are in these academy teams, yet they don't really have a chance of actually making it into Formula One. If we look at Alfa Romeo, maybe there is hope for next season if one of those two guys decides to call it quits. For Callum Ilott, that would be amazing. There are some other people in the current grid in Formula 2 that would have a chance as well. There is that Williams seat that basically everyone is, going for. Like, it's like, oh, that could be Nico Hülkenberg going into that. Oh, Nick de Vries is also a question. Oh, maybe it's Dan Ticktum. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's my grandma. Who knows? Like, it really feels like each person in the world has a chance at going into that Williams seat right now. So as we've already said, there are some drivers that have been in Formula 2 for quite a while. If we look at Guan Yu Zhou, even if we look at Dan Ticktum, I mean, those are two guys that have been in the series forever. And it's just very, very flippin' expensive. And some of them are not able to afford that for much longer. So they would have to call it quits probably if it doesn't work out this time. But touching onto that whole thing, do we feel like the way they're doing it, is it worth it investing so much into it if you might not make it into Formula One? Is this the way we build up people for Formula One? Is it working, or is it a concept where we're like, meh, not sure if that's like the right way to do it? Because we want to see fresh drivers and they need those license points, but are we really getting somewhere, or is this something that we question more than we actually feel like it's cool and it's working out?
I think it's always going to be worth it to a point, because you have to go through F2 to reach F1. So, you know, these people need it. And for the ones it works for, it's totally worth it. And it's, I guess, worth that risk, because by being in F2, however expensive it is, you have that chance that most people will never get to be in F1. But I think there needs to be some kind, I don't know how they do it, but some kind of rule about, you know, bringing people in from F2, because otherwise you do have this whole generation where there's going to be one F2 driver every 2 years or something coming in, because you've got so many drivers staying so long. You know, there's this conversation about Alfa Romeo and who's going to go in there, but then also Bottas is rumoured to have that seat if George gets the Mercedes. And then, you know, do any of the F2 drivers get a seat? Is where are they going to go?
I agree. Like, I don't know how you would solve the issue, but there is definitely an issue, because it feels like it's just like every couple of years you get like an absolute like horde of them go like jump into F1. Like, you know, Lando, George, Alex, they all those three went up together, and then like the next year was like nobody. Well, Latifi. Which, I mean, that says everything. That speaks volumes. Like, so I don't know. I don't know what the fix would be, but it annoys me when I see drivers that are, it sounds pretty horrible, like to say that past their form, that are coming back to Formula One and not giving those youngins like a seat, because like, you've had your time. Come on. Although saying that, I would really like to see Stoffel back in F1, but he's just an exception. He's just an exception to the whole rule. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I have no answers, but I need answers.
I think there's something needs to be done with, like you said, the whole F2 drivers going up, and maybe they could implement sort of a promotion relegation system. I don't see how it would work, but I think it would be good to maybe experiment with the bottom three go down and the top three from F2 go up. But then again, it depends on how good the car is. So you could have maybe a Max Verstappen and Red Bull have a really bad year and he's at the bottom of the championship and then he ends up in F2. It just, I don't know. They'd have to sort of work it out in a sort of way. But I think if you want to get to the top, you've got to commit. And I think that is true with funds as well. You've got to put the money in, you've got to put the work in. And I think as expensive as it is, I think it does work. But it needs to work more with getting promoted to F1, because not enough drivers are getting promoted.
Yeah, I think maybe they need a rule that if you, like, to a point you can't come back. And I know that sounds brutal, because some people have come back and done mind-blowing things, but then other people like Alonso come back, and we know that Alonso's not going to win a championship. So why bother? Like, why for him do they bother, and why for the whole? You know, they could bring in someone new and have a whole new generation of people.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, we've touched on this right now as well. Money makes the world go round. And I think we all know why Nikita Mazepin is in Formula One. I still, and I want to really stress this, I still want to say that these are all good drivers, you know? I mean, they wouldn't be there if they actually sucked. But nonetheless, I feel like a huge issue is the fact that it's always about sponsorship money that you can bring. And if you can be a great driver, but if you don't have the money cash flow, and the team needs the money cash flow, then you will not be option number one. It's sad, but it's the truth. And I think that's a point where they have to touch onto. I think another issue that I want to mention is the fact that we have those driver academies, and those guys are usually more likely to get a seat in Formula One than the guys that race in like private teams. We look at some very talented drivers. I just want to drop the name Richard Verschoor really quick, because that dude, such a great driver. Wow. But he's just not in one of the, driver academies. So who knows if he's going to make it? And I feel like that's a problem, and that shouldn't determine whether or not you can actually make it into Formula One. Because of course, those teams need to look for their personal favorites and development drivers and whatever. But I just feel like they don't all get the same chances. And partly I feel like that's very unfair to those who just cannot, be in a committed relationship with a team, for example. That's just something I want to drop. I don't know if any of you want to say something about that, because that's just something I've been thinking about a lot lately, trying to understand the whole system a bit more.
I mean, touching on like the money side of it, F1's been trying to put like a huge focus around inclusivity into the sport. But how can you be an inclusive sport if the only chances of getting into F1 are if you are making dollar bills?
Well, exactly, most likely based on previous examples, it'll be Deleda who's next in F1, because he's honestly seems to be everywhere. And I would not be surprised at this stage, because it's so about the money, and there needs to be some. I understand they need money. This is how this whole sport works, but there needs to be a limit on how much involvement you can have, because right now we've got two people realistically, like Stroll and then Mazepin will probably have the same, where their dads are buying teams to keep their kids in a sport. And I'm not dissing Stroll, because he is actually doing a lot better than everyone thought he would, I guess. But it's a shame that someone's dad can just take over like that and take away everyone else's chances.
Going back to the driver academy thing, I think the only way they'd be able to get around with everyone having the same chance is just to scrap the academies altogether, and then have at the end of the season a pool of drivers that the teams can pick from, depending on their results throughout the year. Because like you say, you have people that are in the Ferrari academy, the Alpine academy, the Mercedes academy, or whatever. And the other drivers that aren't tied to an academy can have an unbelievable year, and then they don't have the funds to carry on, and then that's them basically done for their chances in Formula One. So I think the only real workaround is just to scrap the academies altogether.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good idea, to have like the top 5, I don't know, in the championship in a pool, and
I mean,
whoever has a gap can fill it with one of them.
And it works in lots of other sports where they have a drafting system, right? So you have these guys that are up for draft, and then you just go in there and be like, I want this one, I want that one. They do that in for F1 esports. But like, I feel like that would be a system that just, focuses a bit more on racecraft compared to money cash flow and, we all need the money. And I mean, it's obvious that F1 needs the money. But let's try and look into the future here. Okay, let's get out our glass and think about like, what are we seeing in the future? Okay, guys, let's make some witchcraft here, because we all know that Formula One is going to change in the future quite a bit. We're going to have some new rules coming in. Do we feel like that those rules are like maybe the point that we are reaching at the end of the season would be a great chance to invite new people into Formula One and really give those young drivers a chance? Or do we feel like it may take a few more years for the sport itself to get used to the new system before they can invite new people in? Because I personally feel like if you want to step up your game right now, you have one driver that is very experienced, and then you get a young driver, and then you make it work, and boom, magic. Because once the old driver retires, the new driver is the old driver. That would be like my perfect mindset. Like that I would love to see that. But do we think that's actually going to work out? Is that a chance that you see, or is that something where you're like, man, I don't think it's going to work like that with everything that's going to change?
I mean, that would work, but realistically for next year that isn't happening because a lot of teams already have their drivers set. So like who are we looking at for contracts? Williams might have, I think if Williams get a new driver, if then it'll probably be Dan Ticktum. So that's my bet. But who else are we looking for really? Like that's going to be new.
I mean, hopefully Alfa Romeo, right? Hopefully.
Which hopefully will be Callum Ilott, which isn't really new anymore. Yeah. So I think that's like the perfect recipe to have someone that's old and new, because I don't know how much you can blame Nikita and Mick this year, but obviously the two rookies isn't proving to work from first look. But I mean, you don't know how much of that is the car, because the car is dog anyway. But like, does it work? It's just so yeah, and older. Sorry, like all the drivers.
Look at that Norris feeling old now. That's how you get old. Is that a gray hair on your head? What the heck?
I've just offended like the whole grid. The more experienced drivers and then a rookie would be brilliant, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then, I agree, hypothetically it would work, but then how long does that work for? Because does the rookie then become the more experienced one after a certain amount of time? Because otherwise you're going to have literally every year constant turnover and no one's ever going to get anywhere. You know, we've had these legends of the sport because they've been there for years and learned how to do it right. You know, no one was expecting Mick Schumacher to come in and do it first time, but no one is saying he won't be able to do it maybe one day. I think that would be the hard thing. And also, why would they do it? You know, F1 teams rely on money and they will always rely on money. You know, for the fans, it might be great to see a rookie with an experienced driver every year, but why would they change what works?
I've just sorry, Liam. I've literally just thought of like, this has just gone around in my mind hole. What if a driver like was getting dropped by a team? What if they weren't allowed to rejoin another team for like another couple of years or something? Like, so like, let's put this in perspective with Bottas. Like, he hopefully is getting replaced at Mercedes for next year. If he does, then he shouldn't be allowed to look at other options for like, I don't know, a year or two. Like, let Mercedes explore, because then even if Mercedes goes to George, like that still leaves a space somewhere for another, like a rookie. So
I think that's a good idea. There has to be a break. Yeah. So they have to bring someone new in, and then if after 2 years that new person doesn't work, then fine, bring someone else back.
You go on to like the shelf of like like an end date, like eggs, like of F1 drivers. And you just crack
them though. Like, there's no way they're just not going to race for 2 years. Where do you put all of these drivers? Are they allowed to drive in Formula E? Are they allowed to do
there's like, there's so many other series, like they could go anywhere, like, but I think you should have like an expiry shelf of F1 drivers, and then you're like eggs, you've got to put them in water to see if, like, you know, they're still good or not.
So say Russell leaves Williams, and so are you saying that they can't come back if they're dropped by the team, or
yeah,
they can leave another team by their own decision, and then
yeah. So Russell can go to Williams, but Bottas can't.
So actually, Charley just wants to say get rid of Bottas and have him never come.
No, because that's different, right? Because if they dropped Bottas, that's because not because another team wants him. Like,
this is escalating.
I actually really like Valtteri. I feel like this is really unfair on him, but
yeah, I get your point, and I think it's actually an interesting thought to say, okay, if a driver gets dropped, so not by choice, but really by choice of their team gets dropped, force him to look at other options as well, because I think there are some great racing series out there, and as much as the F2 drivers are forced to look at other options, I think some F1 drivers can be forced to look at other options as well. I mean, we have Alex Albon thinking about going into IndyCar. Like, we don't know what's gonna happen. But dude is a great driver, so you go. I just feel like that's like that sounds like a smart way of thinking, at least for now.
The other way to do it is to bring more teams onto the grid. I know we had in the past, we had Caterham, we had HRT, we had Manor, which was Mauricio back then. I think towards the end of Manor's lifespan, they sort of became a Mercedes B team where Ocon's come through, and Verline as well. It's criminal how Verline didn't get anything else in Formula One after that. That he was amazing that year.
Yeah, he was.
So bring more teams and reduce the amount of money that it takes to run a team or to compete in Formula One, and give the drivers a chance by maybe Porsche coming in, Audi coming in, BMW coming in, something like that, so they can just get in. I'm trying to say like designated young driver teams as such.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how that would work, but I think it would be good because they then get experience and then other teams can pick them up. Obviously, it's not going to be great for the teams that have just come in and obviously maybe need experienced drivers to hit the ground running in Formula One. But I just think it's food for thought about more teams. We do need more teams in F1.
We do. I agree. I actually agree with that. I love how I went to eggs before I had that thought, but never mind. That just goes to my...
Putting F1 drivers in water to see if they're good enough still. That was your thought.
I mean, that's a bit like jungle camp, right? Maybe we should all throw them into the jungle camp and whoever wins just gets to keep their seat. Usually, if we're doing a podcast before a race weekend, we give our predictions for the race, who is going to be our top 3. So quickly, let's just throw in here, who do you guys think will win the Formula 2 championship this year?
Liam Lawson.
Bold. But
I think Oscar Piastri might do it. I'd love it.
I'm gonna go for good old Robert Schwartzman.
Woo, okay.
I just love him, and I think he had like such a good rookie season last year. Like, he was on fire, like brilliant. And I think maybe he's lacked it a little bit this season, but he's still up there.
Yeah. Okay, so to mix it all up a bit, I'm going to say Guan Yu Zhou, just because he's in there and I would never underestimate him. But I like the Liam Lawson take on things because he is one very talented driver. Oscar Piastri as well. I'm very excited to see if a rookie can actually win their first season this year. That would be nuts. I would love that. But let's not continue this much longer because we will start rambling as we always do. So thank you guys so much for watching this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave us a like and a follow in case you enjoy our content. Definitely check out the links in the description below to find all of our social media platforms. Also, we now have a Twitch channel as well, and some content is going to come up very soon. So stay tuned and subscribe to that one as well. And as always, stay happy, stay hydrated, spread love. And we will see you next week for another episode of Grid Talk Talks the Grid. Goodbye.